All right, joined now by Andy Katz, one of the leading voices on college basketball throughout the country at March Madness, NCAA, Fox Sports, Big Ten. Is there any job you don't have right now in college hoops?
Well, I do a little stuff for the Pac-12 of the West Coast Conference, at one point for the Big East. So,
There you go. So staying busy. Let me start with this. It's been a month, 6 weeks since this all went down. Conference tournaments were starting. They were getting postponed, stopped. Now that you can look back on it, what is the college basketball world doing or reacting to after what happened in March?
Well, it was surreal. There's no question. I was actually at the West Coast Conference the first 2 days of that week, saw Gonzaga win that, and then went to the Big Ten tournament. And I was there in the middle of all of it. We had the first night when there were fans, and then that Thursday when everything changed and everything got shut down. Literally, I was doing the interviews for the Big Ten Network between Rutgers and Michigan, and 15 minutes before tip-off, they called everyone off the floor and canceled the event, and then hours later, the NCAA tournament. So it's unprecedented. It's hundreds of millions of dollars lost across the board in the NCAA, money that you're just not going to make up. So it's disastrous in that sense, but we're going to remain optimistic that we're going to have a 2021 season and be positive that hopefully things will work out to where we can.
So you mentioned that all the money is lost, and there's been a lot of buzz today about Cincinnati just dropped their soccer program. What is the ripple effect of the tournament, basketball and football predominantly, buoying all these other non-revenue sports? And do you anticipate seeing more cuts like that?
Unfortunately, I do. And I think a lot of it will have to do with what happens in the fall. College football is still the big cash cow for the Power Six conferences, if you will, and I'm including the American that Cincinnati is in. They get a lot of revenue from television. Obviously, the SEC and the Big Ten, the ACC, and really I would include the Big 12 in this. They get a lot of gate receipts.
Right.
Sometimes Pac-12 does, sometimes doesn't, but most of their money is obviously from the college football television deals, and then obviously ultimately the playoff and the payout off of that. So if that goes away, then that is really catastrophic for the NCAA member schools. There's a domino effect of that. I think we're going to see a lot of tightening across the board athletics. We've already seen a number of athletic departments ask their high revenue coaches to take a pay cut, their athletic directors. So that's all happening in real time, and it'll continue at least in the short term, at least for the next probably calendar year.
So you've worked in television for a long time. For our viewers who don't understand the logistics of it, CBS and Turner have the NCAA tournament, so they pay for those rights. They sell advertisements. Ultimately, the tournament didn't air. So where does all that money go? How does that work?
Well, yeah. So the way it works is the NCAA tournament really funds the entire NCAA. And when I say that, I mean all those one bid leagues rely on that revenue. And so now it isn't just a one-off, like, there's going to be a hit, but it's built up over time. So, it's not like they go from zero to whatever, 100,000 or $1 million or whatever it is. They're going to have money, at least in their bank. And each year that they were to lose it, of course, that would decrease. Now, the Power Five conferences, especially, they actually run college football, not the NCAA at the Division I level. NCAA runs Division II and Division III football, FBS as they call it, the football division. But the high-level college football that you see in the College Football Championship, that's actually run by the conference commissioners, and they're the ones that keep that money. That money necessarily wouldn't trickle down to the Northeast Conference where Bryant is, or the Ivy League where Brown is. So, or even the Big East, they don't have football. But the NCAA tournament money, that does get distributed across the board. And as you progress in the tournament, your league gets different shares and different amounts of money. Now, and every league is, by the way, different. Some leagues will lean, in the one bid leagues, will lean heavily toward the teams that make it all the time, and they will get a higher percentage. Other leagues will say, you know what? one team, 8 teams in, we're all going to get an equal share.
Do you anticipate some of these programs that maybe don't have a ton of money in terms of charters to every game and a big allotment for salaries for assistants? Could their departments, let's say like a URI, maybe squeeze and say, hey, we don't have as much money for basketball funds, or even the Big East, if that Fox money isn't coming in, hey, we have to make cuts somewhere?
Well, hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully we have the season. The beauty of those regular season deals is they all occurred.
Right.
All that got cut in terms of college basketball for the conferences pre-NCAA tournament was just those final few days of the conference tournament. So for the Big East, they got 1 day in. I wouldn't really count the half that they had with Creighton and Cons. So they got 1 day in. They lost, obviously, their revenue and their television money from, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. With the A10, they didn't get it those 3 days either, leading into Brooklyn. The Ivy, I don't think they necessarily make a lot of money off of their 14 playoff, but they didn't, whatever they would have gotten out of that and television rights, they didn't get because they didn't play it. But the regular season, all the regular season television revenue and advertising revenue, that should have all been paid because that all get completed.
So everyone is obviously looking ahead to fall, and camps for football usually are starting in July, but basketball sneakily is right behind, games starting in November. So do you think, how big of an impact does fall sports have on a winter sport like basketball in terms of starting, like the domino effect of that?
Well, so one thing that we've been doing quite often here, 3 weeks, we're going to continue it weekly, is we've been doing this social series at NCAA.com once a week, and I've been interviewing a number of the chief medical officers and the advisory board with the NCAA. And there are, of course, you would imagine a myriad of issues here with fall sports, and especially with football, because that's the elephant in the room. The bottom line is fall sports won't happen unless students are on campus. That's the major difference between the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, NFL, and college sports. They could maybe try to create these bubbles where you maybe have the, Major League Baseball in Arizona and Florida that's been bandied about, or the NFL with no fans, or the NBA in a bubble in Vegas. All those kinds of things can happen potentially because they're pro sports. But university presidents are not going to allow just college athletes to be on campus with no students. Right. So the first hurdle is get the students on campus. If that happens, even if there's social distancing or masks or what have you, then the next phase is, okay, can we have athletics with or without fans? And when they make that decision, then there's going to be a third tier of, okay, how much time do certain sports need to get ready? Because that's the other thing, is a lot of these athletes right now, okay, maybe they're training, maybe they're not. It's certainly not what they're used to. It's not at the level they're used to. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to work with the football committee. How much time do you need? So if we say, okay, all students can come back September 1st or October 1st, do you need 30 days? Do you need 25 days? Do you need 60 days? And other sports may need a lot less time. They don't need that physical contact. And the last thing I'll just tell you that I think is going to be a real interesting curveball here is, as we've seen, all 50 states are not created equal. All 50 governors are not treating this the same. So what happens in certain leagues where you have different states with different rules? Take out West, where the Mountain West, you could have Wyoming and Idaho, where Boise State and Wyoming are, say, you know what, we're fine. We're coming back August 15th. But then in Nevada and California, where San Diego State and Nevada and UNLV are, they could say, no, we're not coming back till October. What do you do with your sports if there's a difference of when these student athletes come back to campus?
Unbelievable amount of balls in the air, no pun intended, as we try to get sports back. All right, I want to talk to you about the, I hate to use the word epidemic in light of what's going on, but it's been going on, the transfers in college basketball. But our local teams here have been hit particularly hard. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to the transfers out of URI, Tyrese Martin, Jacob Toppin just yesterday, Mekhi Long. URI is a mid-major, but they've been a good program, went to the tournament twice in the last couple years under Dan Hurley. Is this just the new norm, or is this sort of a lot for David Cox right now?
No, it's the new norm, and it's really unfortunate, especially now. We'll wait and see if the one-time waiver is approved. I'm skeptical that it will be approved for this calendar year because I could see, back to your original point about cost cutting, I could see plenty of schools saying to their coaches, okay, can you get by with 10 players this season? Because we can save on 3 scholarships here. Even though the player is on scholarship,
Right.
someone has to pay for it. And usually it's, whether it's the athletic department, the university, that money is still being transferred within that pool of money. So if you could go to that coach and say, hey, do you really need these 2 and 3 extra scholarships this year? They may say no. So it's going to be interesting to see with the transfers, how many good landing spots are there? Are you going to get the waiver? We don't know that. That's so far down the food chain, if you will, of important things right now. And then that also dovetails into the NBA draft right now. Fats Russell declared, I don't think he should stay in. I don't think he will. But we don't even know when the NBA draft is going to be. It's supposed to be late June, but there's no Chicago Combine. There's no workouts for, in person. It's all virtual. The draft is certainly not going to be figured out until they figure out how to conclude, if they are going to conclude this NBA season. So my gut is the draft may not be until August or September. So now you're going to wait, not knowing your fate that late, and then seeing if you even have a landing spot back at your school. I think it's really dicey. And I'm not surprised, related to the Big East here. We saw on Tuesday, Jeremiah Robinson Earl from Villanova just said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to just go back to Villanova. So, there's a player that easily could have been in the draft, decided it's just too messy right now. I'm going to stay in school.
So a school like URI, by and large, their whole lineup is going to change. They also have transfers, of course, coming in. They got the Mitchell twins coming from Maryland. Is a team, an A10 team like URI, are they going to sort of have to remake themselves every year? Because David Cox keeps telling me he has to re-recruit players, freshman, sophomore, junior year, so they don't go to a high major. Is this just where they live and sort of players coming and going as an A10 program?
Well, it shouldn't be. It is the new norm for the core of your roster. Shouldn't be. I should say that. I mean, look at Dayton. Dayton built up to this historic season that might have landed them in the Final Four. Obi Toppin was not a one and done. He'd been on campus multiple years. Jalen Crutcher. I mean, that was an old team. And think back 2 years ago when Rhode Island was in the NCAA tournament. That was an old team.
Right.
They kept them together for 2 seasons in a row. Providence, which would have been in the NCAA tournament, was an older team. And had they had a better start, I think we would have been talking about them as sharing, the Big East title in the regular season if they got their act together earlier. So it's still always better to get old and stay old. I do think there are going to certainly be rotation pieces that you're going to have to interchange every year. That's fine. But you're going to need a core of 3 or 4 guys to stay 2 to 3 years, because URI is not Duke. It's not Kentucky.
Right.
It's not a school like that where you can just shuffle in guys in and out.
You mentioned Providence. You saw them a handful of times, at least in person, at the Dunk as part of the FS1 coverage. What was their ceiling in the NCAA tournament? Because they were one of the hottest teams in the country.
I think they could have been a Sweet 16 team. No question. They finally were playing well. Yes, I mean, I think I did 6 of their games, which I love doing. It's obviously easy for me to be there. And so, and I saw their growth. I mean, because they were, I saw them early. Lose at Northwestern, beat up on the sort of the lower level teams, and then really struggle early in the Big East, and then come just completely flip the switch because Lawan Pipkins started to play within himself. Alpha Diallo started to play the way he did last year and not try to impress anyone else and do things he couldn't do. He stayed in his lane. Nate Watson finally got healthy. And then Duke and Reeves, were the complimentary guys that they should be. And I should obviously mention Malik White. He ended up being an unsung player. So did Khalif Young, a player that I don't think got enough credit for his impact. So I really thought they had the potential to be a Sweet 16. And really, actually, if memory serves, I picked them to win the Big East tournament. They were coming in just hot going into the Big East tournament. And I had a good feeling they were going to be able to win 3 games in 3 days.
You've covered the sport a long time. PC, when the Big East was the old Big East and was enormous, once, the Louisvilles and Marquettes of the world entered, had trouble getting into the tournament. They went from 04 to 14 without this would have been the 6th time in the last 7 years under Ed Cooley. Do you see that program being in that top tier Big East every year where there'll be a perennial tournament team moving forward?
I do. I mean, I really like their team for next season, with a healthy Nate Watson, Greg Gant, Bynum, the transfer from St. Joe's, who should be their point guard, and then Duke and Reeves. Obviously, I think their stars will rise. They're working the transfer market. So in my Power 36, I'm drawing a blank on exactly where I had them, but I had them in there essentially behind Villanova and Creighton. And I think I had them 3rd or 4th right there in the Big East.
Nice. Now, let me ask you something. You've probably gotten this a lot. What was your Final Four had the tournament been played?
Well, without seeing the bracket, I felt good about Gonzaga, Kansas. Trying to think here. Oh, I thought for sure one Big Ten team was going to get in.
Okay.
Was Michigan State, Maryland, or Illinois. I was leaning Michigan State. And then after that, I actually thought, Kentucky had a pretty good shot. They were playing really well as well. So I could have definitely seen a Kentucky, Kansas, Michigan State, Gonzaga Final Four with the Flyers. Dayton is definitely a team that would have been right there, probably in the Elite Eight and possibly getting there.
Yeah, I'm a Maryland grad, so I am upset about no tournament because I was hoping this would be like 0-2 under Gary Williams again. All right. Before I let you go, if everything gets back to normal and you can get back to Newport this summer, I guess, what do you love most about Newport that you spend so much time there?
Okay, first of all, I will be in Newport. I absolutely love Rhode Island. Here's my pitch to Governor Raimondo. Okay, this should be the sales pitch. It should be my Rhode Island. Okay, and everyone that comes into the state, whether you're seasonal, whether you're year-round, my pitch for the Commerce Department is, what makes it your Rhode Island? And for me, my Rhode Island is the ocean. I love the ocean. I love, of course, playing tennis in Newport, but the ocean to me is the most calming presence. It's my namaste. There were times during the season where I would just get away, go over the bridge. Part of the reason I love doing all these Providence games, it was my escape. I did a lot of games in the Midwest, studio in the Midwest. I would just go over that bridge. I'd see the ocean, and that was my Rhode Island, the way I just felt at peace every time I saw the ocean.
All right. I like that pitch. So do you need a percentage of the marketing budget when that goes?
Hey, Governor, I'm right here. I'm ready to go. Put me on television. I'm ready for the pitch.
All right. Andy Katz, hey, thanks so much for your time. Everyone follow you on Twitter where you continue to have great content. I liked the stuff with the Creighton father-son duo this week. That was good stuff. And do you know he and Ed Cooley vacationed together? That was a little fun fact I got from Cooley recently.
I know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Talking vacationing where you're Big East foes. I like that. All right, Andy Katz, thanks so much for joining us and stay safe.